welcome to the Theory of Everything, the first one of the year and ever.
Yay.
And a big welcome to my venerable co-host, Andy.
Wow, thank you.
Yeah,
I'm not used to you calling me Andy.
That's cool. It's not good, is it?
Explain why in a moment, yeah.
Okay. And my other co-host, the mildly irritating Devon.
Wow, I'm not used to you calling me Devon. Wait, what?
Oh, mildly irritating.
Yeah, well, I'm used to that.
Okay, so, gentlemen, how are you?
Well, I'm well, thank you very much. Happy New Year to you all.
Happy New Year.
Good.
Co-host Ford.
Hello.
Why I'm not used to being called Andy by you gentlemen?
Because you normally go by the name Paps. By everyone
some,
you know.
By some.
Not everyone, okay.
Or Dad.
Just me.
That too.
Or Dad. I like Paps, although it does make me feel like a granddad.
Yeah.
Which might be appropriate.
At this stage, yeah.
No.
Well, thank you, Ford, for welcoming us all.
So, I guess we'll move on to our first segment.
Oh, before we do, though, we should explain to our listeners, or listener...
one listener, yeah.
Who is it?
What the show is going to be about, and what the idea behind the reason why we've created this podcast. That's the best way to put it. Would you like to explain?
For a laugh.
Or perhaps Devon might like to.
That's my explanation, for a laugh.
For a laugh. And also, how we came up with the name. Yeah.
Oh,
Lots of deliberation.
Yeah, long deliberation.
Too much.
Well, I guess this is our online magazine, I guess, if you want to call it that, where we talk about funny, inspiring, interesting things, media, sports. Not so much sports.
Not so much sport, yeah.
Tech, I guess.
Tech, yeah.
And
games.
spiritually churchy stuff. Oh, games you want.
Don't forget the games.
No, can't forget the games.
Yeah. I think that sums it up pretty well.
That was apt. Yeah, good.
Yeah, it's good.
Well, I got written in front of me a little tagline. Did I adapt this from something else? Anything spiritual, funny, inspiring, or interesting from media, tech, and church and game. I guess media comes under movies, games, and all sorts of things, doesn't it?
Yeah, technically, yeah.
But as we're all Christians as well, we kind of have a different slant on things than perhaps the podcast might.
Oh.
And if our listeners aren't Christians,
that niche?
Need to put them off.
Is this a niche I see?
We found a niche. And what's the other niche? Tell us, Ford.
Me? Oh, okay. You just throw me under the bus here. All right.
You're a spokesperson.
Okay. All right. Am I supposed to be hosting this? I can't. Okay. Our niche, I guess, is that Paps, our father, is a father-son
Our
dynamic.
Father.
Our Father
in heaven. No,
our Father on earth. Yeah,
that one. Yeah. Not to be confused with.
Although I like to think our Father on heaven is indeed listening.
The fourth co-host.
Let's hope he subscribes to the podcast.
You better hope for it.
Yeah.
I know I would if I had a son, I'm just saying.
Yeah. Before we go anywhere on dodgy ground there, we'll
moving on swiftly.
We'll move on, shall we?
Not to lose our only listener.
Yeah.
Can't be too controversial.
Yeah.
That's true. Yeah.
All right.
Thank you. Okay.
Would you like to lead us into your segment?
Am I up first?
I guess so, yeah.
Paps segment. Subject.
So Paps segment for the week, however often we do these, but for episode 1.
Yes.
Let me just have a look what I was going to share with you under my notes here.
Yes.
I mean, I've got so many things I want to talk about over the next number of weeks or podcast shows that we do, but I'm particularly interested in science fiction. I love films or the thought or anything to do with artificial intelligence. In fact, I might mention that before we go today.
Your segment just got 2 times as long.
No. I'm going to make one comment, or maybe the comment might expand out, and then I won't have time to expand on this. But I will just say I'll leave that. What else? Games. Yeah, I love playing games. I love gadgets. There are some sports I enjoy. Formula 1, snooker. Not particularly interested in kicking ball games, but
So you're our sports guy.
as close as
Yeah.
it gets.
Yeah.
And music, which is another area that, and I guess my decade would be the 80s, if I'm honest with you. Please don't expect me to have anything positive or interesting to say about music since the 80s. That's all I'll say about that. Yeah.
So you got nothing to say about Justin Bieber or anything like that?
Who?
Just since he's still in it, I don't know.
I know. Oh, he won't thank me for saying this, but in his younger days, Devon was.
Hang on. That's not. No. This was not a thing.
Said to look a little bit like Justin Bieber in his younger days. I don't know if Justin Bieber's changed his appearance, but I know Devon has, so that's okay.
That's right then.
Yeah. Anyway, so my segment, if I'm going first, am I? I just wanted to say, I heard this, and I'm only repeating something I heard on another podcast, which I might mention another time, but not today. Do you know, I really think, and I agree with this is not my original thought, but I wanted to share it anyway.
Oh, you could have passed it off as your thought.
Yeah, too honest.
Take credit for it.
Yeah, it's not good.
Okay. I believe we are the most blessed people that have ever lived.
Oh, that's controversial.
Would you like me to justify that statement?
I think you have to. I mean,
I think I can.
Think of our one audience member.
Yeah, I'm going to try and justify that statement. I've got 3 points I want to make to justify that statement, and then maybe you can comment yourselves and see what you agree or disagree. The first thing is that we live in Great Britain. Now, it's a bit of a fixer-upper. I know it's not perfect, but Great Britain's a great country to live in. If you look around the world, you could be born in a lot worse places than in Great Britain. So that's my first thought. Okay. And the second reason I think that we're the most blessed people that have ever lived is that we live now. You know, if we'd lived 20 years ago, you wouldn't have even had a smartphone in your pocket. Can you believe that, boys? Yeah. Now,
you just have a diary. You have to write everything
before smartphone.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, but not that young.
I mean, that smartphone, I'm sure you've got one somewhere about you, has more power than there was in the computers that sent the first men to the moon. I'm not going to go there with regards to...
Could it really happen?
Okay, yeah.
I go with Patrick Moore on that. Whatever Patrick Moore says is good enough for me. So he believes they went. So I'll tell you who Patrick Moore is another time. You can Google it. You can Google it. Yeah. 20 years ago we wouldn't have had smartphones, or even probably very many mobile phones, let alone a smartphone. And 40 years ago, do you know we didn't even have computers? I think, I would be about 10 or 12 when we got our first computer that had 1K of memory. Can you imagine what 1K of memory? That's 100 letters or characters of code that we used to type in. It was about a screen and a half of writing on the page on the screen to make your programs work. We did some amazing things with 1K memory, I would say. But 40 years ago, no computers in the home. We didn't even have HD television.
I think I could remember
that. There wasn't even the internet. Can you believe that?
I don't even understand how the internet works now. I mean, I'd be pretty terrible if I got thrown back into the past or something.
Have to go to the library.
You like to think, I'd have so much knowledge I could enlighten the world, but no, not really. I don't know how everything works.
Yeah.
If you wanted to find something out, you have to put on your hat, coat, scarf and gloves and walk down to the library, spend 3 hours and then come back and realise you didn't get all the information you wanted and have to go back again the next day.
Yeah.
And sometimes you have to catch a bus as well. Now you just sit on your phone, on your sofa.
Quick Google is
everything is at your fingertips. So I'm stating the obvious, I know, but this is just... and then the third thing, so first thing, where we live. Second thing, when we live, as in we live now.
Yeah.
And the third thing is that at this very moment, we can all just about fit in. I don't know about the future, and I would like at some point in the future of our podcast to talk about the future. But we do just about all fit in. It's getting more crowded. The whole world is getting more crowded. We've got so many people live now that, more than ever lived before, obviously. But yeah, the world's population is just about managing. That's a phrase, isn't it?
Just about.
Just about
Just
managing.
about managing. Yeah, jam. That's it. Yeah. So my statement was that we are the most blessed people that have ever lived, and I'll add to that to finish these thoughts by saying, and that will ever live.
Oh, okay.
Oh, that's
Oh.
controversial.
Now you've made the conversation.
Oh, now you see.
Yeah, there it is.
That supposes that things aren't going to get better.
Yeah.
Now, that's a big thing, isn't it? But it might do in some areas, but I'm not so sure it will in every area of life. So that's my opening thoughts. I don't know if you wanted to comment on any of that. Disagree?
Oh, yeah, for sure. No, I would like to point out, well, maybe suggest, that just because we have a lot of technology and healthcare, I guess, does that mean that we're the happiest, though? Because there's a lot of, I don't know, it's a bit hard to know whether there's depression and all this mental illness that goes about back in the day.
I think you could be right, yeah.
But just because we have lots of stuff, it doesn't necessarily follow that we're better off for it.
No. It's a good point.
Yeah. But then again, we're not being invaded by, Vikings, so I guess we're doing all right.
I'd wholly agree with that. The quality of life right now is probably better than it ever has been in the Western world. But your second point, was it when we live?
The technology?
Yeah.
We live now. Yeah.
For technology, is it so great that now every kid can just be given an iPad and then they shut up and they rely on the iPad now to feel good?
Oh gosh, I thought you younger generations would be defending this whole tech environment we live in. I'm the one who's saying it's good, and I'm the oldie.
Oh,
wow. That's not what I expected. But you make a good point. Yeah, it's a concern, isn't it?
Yeah.
Just
And
how
like
much we do it.
Like I've said before, because I can just whip up my phone and Google something, that means I don't discuss something with someone to work out an answer.
Oh yeah.
Are we creating an antisocial world? Is that what you said?
Exactly. So we're creating a world that we've got hundreds of friends, but actually no friends.
Ooh.
It kills conversation. Do you know? Our vicar only said it the other day during a sermon. No, it wasn't the other day. In case he's listening, it was probably 6 months ago. But he commented once how Google, other search engines are available, have, though nobody uses them.
That's it.
Yeah, has kind of killed the art of conversation, really. If you were at this is another phrase that you guys might not be familiar. A dinner party. You know, dinner party. Yeah, dinner party. You have a bunch of friends round and you eat a meal and talk. Yeah, and that's sort of setting, really. But you have a conversation. You think, oh, do you remember so and so? And you start going down a memory lane.
Yeah, exactly.
But you rack your brains because you've forgotten an important detail.
Yeah.
And you might spend the whole rest of the evening, and then suddenly somebody will remember it. Well, that's how it would have gone 20 years ago. Today, the answer's there within minutes. So the conversation comes to a much more abrupt ending because you've solved the question before you really had a chance to consider it. Yeah, so sorry, I jumped in while you were making your points, Devon.
No, that's exactly what I was saying.
Yeah,
for sure. Yeah,
it's not necessarily a good thing. Yeah.
So we've got basically the information of the whole world and all history at our fingertips. But is that good in a social level? It's good in an intellectual level because I can find out what the study happened, I don't know, 20 years ago, just like that, and all the details about the study without having to leave my living room. But at the social level, I don't really know if it actually contributes or detriments.
Well, any comment, thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I can't help but agree. It's all true, isn't it?
What?
Yeah.
Oh, but it's good stuff too.
Yeah, definitely, it's good. That's why I say, in an intellectual level and at a practical level, you can now do things from the computer in your pocket than you could never do before.
No.
But of course,
What do you
there's
think?
things.
What do you think of the idea of regulating that sort of thing?
Oh, that's dangerous now.
Is it?
Yeah.
Yes.
We might upset a few people that thought of that.
Well, certainly, but
Yeah.
it's the idea.
Freedom of speech.
Article 13.
Let me look that up. I'm not sure.
It's American, isn't it?
It's European, I think, isn't it?
Oh, is it? Okay.
I'm only familiar with Article 50. I don't know.
That's British.
We won't go there because, listeners, we did say we just won't go political on this. We might skirt around the edges of politics. I'm sure we agreed.
We did. Yeah.
Politics, yeah.
Politics
is. I'd rather talk about Christianity and world religions rather than politics. I'm sure. But the quickest way to get listeners unsubscribing, I think, would be to go.
that one guy.
Yeah.
You don't want to lose that one guy.
No. So, what was your point? Sorry.
What? Who was it? Whose was it?
Article. You mentioned
Oh,
article.
yeah. Talking about regulating
Yeah.
internet use or gadget use.
Well, it's the kind of thing with the idea of overpopulation. The idea that you, population control. It's dodgy, and everyone thinks, "Oh dear, I don't like that." But is it something that has to be considered? Because you just can't carry on down the dark road, can you?
Yeah, my third point about we could just about fit in, but in the future that might not be true. Yeah. The world is limited or finite resources, haven't we?
Are you talking about mass sterilization?
No.
Okay.
No, I'm not.
It sounds like what Ford was talking about.
I don't know what you mean.
No, of course.
Yeah. What?
Good.
No, I don't think we need to do that.
Well,
now.
Who knows where it goes?
Also, my other point that I was going to make was your first point, which is where we live. And that's a very controversial thing to say in this generation. Yes.
Oh.
For sure. It's deemed by a lot of people to be not very nice to consider your culture or Western culture.
Oh right, okay.
Above other people's cultures. Yeah.
Okay.
But where do you draw the line between that being kind of racist and being patriotic?
Exactly. Or being objectively right, like throwing people off buildings for being homosexual is not good. We don't do that in Western cultures.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Or do it? No.
I mean, even in Western world culture, I think we have a pretty good shout at it. I know there are faults and there are problems in our country, but we still have a pretty good healthcare system. It's creaking, it's struggling under the pressures that it's under, without wishing to go any further down the political conversation. But there are not many countries that have what we have, and we have nearly full employment. Nearly, not completely full employment, but I would imagine there are more homeowners in this country than
the average
European countries, especially. So if you compare our healthcare system to the US and you compare the general social well-being,
quality of life, do you mean?
Yeah, but they do say though, and I've heard this said. I'll just add this in. Now I'm going to shut up because I've done too much talking.
Too much talking for a podcast.
Yeah, I want to give you guys more opportunity. That in countries that have a higher tax rate, you have a higher happiness rating on the happiness index. I think is the right terminology.
Is that what the government tells you?
No. There is such a thing as a happiness index, and when you compare that to the high tax systems, in other words, you pay more, you have a more likelihood of living in a happier country. If you can trust your government to do what it should.
Yes, corruption, that sort of.
So we've skirted around a lot of politics there.
Yeah, we have, haven't we?
It's a bit heavy for the first joke.
It was a bit.
I like it.
But Yeah, so my main point was we are the most blessed people that have ever lived and probably ever will live. And that kind of goes against the grain, but I do kind of understand why, when I heard that, I had to agree with it.
Yeah, I do agree with you as well.
Yeah.
On the whole, for sure.
I would love to think that in 200 years, I think 200 years, somebody might be able to correct me, and I could easily quickly find out by going on Google.
Oh, gotta be careful with that.
When we could have a Star Trek future where the whole world is at peace and one, because we've got other alien technologies and peoples to worry about, that we unite as a humanity. But we've solved poverty, we've solved sickness and illness, and Star Trek is reality.
But isn't Star Trek just like the one world order?
Yeah. Let's make a note to come back to that one. Yeah. But the people seem quite happy.
They do.
That's because that's what their government tells them to think. They got like mind control.
That's because they pay so much taxes.
Yeah, okay.
Well, if our one listener wants to write in to us at theoryofanything@hotmail.com about what they think, then perhaps we can come back to them.
Okay.
With some letters, you know.
I'm sure we'll come back.
That'd be nice, yeah.
Yeah.
That was just my opening gambit thoughts, if you like.
I like it.
So I'll shut up there and hand over. I think now Ford's gonna give us something to think about now, aren't you?
Yeah, well, I don't know about us thinking about it. That was a bit darker and deeper than I was going to go. But
all right. No, we need lightening up after that, don't we?
Yeah, you want cheering up us.
We don't want people thinking they're coming and tuning into this to get miserable.
Ford's segment. Subject.
All I was going to do is some movie news. Right, sharp left turn into news. Right, so you may or may not be aware, 22 years ago in the making, they're redoing a Mulan film.
Yes.
Yes.
Live action.
I'm not sure what I think about this.
Yes, live action Disney remakes. I'm going to dive into all this.
I saw a trailer for that last time.
Did you indeed?
Yeah.
Well, I saw a trailer for it. I thought it didn't look as funny, because you know how it's the original was a bit of a comedy kind of thing, and there's no Mushu as far as I can tell. You know, the funny little lizard dragon.
Yeah.
There's magic in it, which is weird. And I think there's one of the antagonists, the bad guys. Yeah, is a witch of some sort, which didn't really take any. You didn't get any of that in the original.
Didn't we? I can't remember.
No, we didn't. The one antagonist was like the big guy with the sword.
He was a Hun.
Yeah.
And I think they're shaking that up.
Was there any spiritual content in the original Mulan?
Well,
yes.
Well, yes, but it was like it didn't really come into play in any action scenes or anything. It was just in the background.
It was all like the spirits of your ancestors and dragons and that kind of thing.
Yeah, but they couldn't really do anything. It was the impression I got.
Okay.
Yeah, which I thought was alright.
Yeah, a lot of sword play in the trailer I saw.
Yeah. Oh, there you go.
Sword play.
What I thought was interesting was a full Chinese cast, which is quite good, and director. I think actually is the director Chinese? I can't remember. Okay. But she's female, so that's interesting.
In a good way, yeah.
I just wanted to float that out as what do you think of these Disney remakes? I think this one is being done differently to the original, which what I don't like about the Lion King and what is this?
What you think? The other one's just the same thing rehashed, basically.
Yeah, this copy and paste. It's no good.
The Lion King was just a retelling of the same story.
I liked the Sleeping Beauty one. They called it Maleficent, didn't they?
Oh yes.
That took a completely different angle on a Disney remake, which I thought was worth its tape. You know.
Okay, worth its tape.
Oh well,
yeah. Do they still record them on tape?
Analog. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Worth its megabytes.
Megabytes. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I wonder what you guys thought about Disney remakes.
Disney remakes. Yeah. Go on, Devon. You go first.
Sadly, I've gotten a bit sick of them.
Oh. Okay.
Yes.
Put this foot down.
I don't really know why. Because I think, on the most part, I enjoyed them. Like the Maleficent, I really enjoyed that. I watched it a couple times. But things like Mowgli, it's a bit like, okay, it's kind of enough now.
Jungle Book was great. The remake or the re-envisioning of
You liked
Jungle
it,
Book.
but
I
the
did like
original's
it.
so much better though.
Yeah.
Let's be
Oh,
real.
I found the original so depressing. Maybe that's just me.
Yeah, maybe.
I think it's the somber tone it came. Anyway, sorry, that's a sharp left turn into misery.
But yeah, I'm not sure what I really think about this new Mulan film though. I guess I'll have to see it before I make a judgment, or try and see it before I make a judgment. But
Did
my
they do-
instinct goes to not again,
Yeah, not again.
unfortunately.
Did they do Dumbo again?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes, I did.
Yeah. I haven't seen that.
No, I haven't seen it.
And I haven't seen the what do you call it? Recraft. I don't know what's
Reimagining, rehashing.
reimagining, but that was all CGI, wasn't it? Which I think is different in the case of Mulan. I think Mulan
Live
is
action.
a live action.
Oh, you talking about Lion King? Lion King was all.
Yeah, Lion King was a complete computer generated.
Yeah,
There
yes,
was
yes.
no.
Mowgli
And-
was mostly, but just Mowgli was.
Yeah, Mowgli
live
was
action.
live action, but
Yeah.
everything else was CGI. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess my problem with Aladdin specifically. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we don't want the quality of the show to be too good. We'll maintain it, won't we?
Yeah.
Mama. Yeah.
That's just too much effort. Aladdin and Lion King, they seem like copy paste rehashes, except they took out all the good bits. If you know what I mean.
Okay.
That's what I took away from that.
Okay.
Yeah. So I hope this isn't the same. You know.
Because I liked Mulan quite a lot. We weren't allowed to watch it for ages, were we?
No, that's good. Yeah.
What are you trying to say? I can't remember us telling you not that.
Can you not? Okay,
Yeah.
that's
It's too
confusing.
spiritual.
Because it has spiritual content. Yeah.
Yeah, because there's basically ghosts riding around, that kind of thing.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, quite hot on that sort of thing.
Yeah. But the music in Mulan is some of the best, I think.
Yes. I like the music.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Was it?
Let's get down to business.
Let's get down to business.
You make me
To
want to
defeat
watch it. I don't remember ever seeing the original. And that's
Oh,
And make a
Listen,
man
I
out
am
of you.
keen to see the new version, and so if I'm going to see that, I should probably have something to compare it with.
did your mama tell you shouldn't watch it because it's got too many spirits in it?
Yeah. I don't think my mama had a strong opinion on it.
No, that's fair.
Yeah. And
Well,
I was
of course.
probably about 25 when it came out.
Right. Fair.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, of course, we are the target demographic for this film, so we have to share our opinions, don't we?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a great, interesting conversation. I think my only concern about Disney's rehashing of various classics, let's call them that, is that it kind of sort of strikes me as being a bit kind of scraping the barrel a little bit.
Okay.
Rather than create something new and original, let's just remake everything in our back catalogue.
Yeah.
And how much of that is motivated by money generation, generating a more income, really, that's income stream. Yeah.
Yeah.
But if they're going to do something interesting with it, then I'd be up for it, like you say. So are we saying Lion King no?
Well, from what I've no.
But
Maleficent,
we can't
yes.
judge Maleficent, yeah. That I knew there was one you mentioned. It was.
Oh,
yours.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, it's because they did something so ridiculously different. It was well worth the time,
But did it get criticised for being too different?
I
Oh.
believe there's always some people who want it to be exactly the same as the original. And
Well,
there's
I
always
think-
that in other franchises as well.
Mm-hmm.
My thought is
obviously.
always, if you like the original so much, why don't you just watch the original?
Yeah. There are some things that should not be touched, I think.
That leads quite well onto my subject.
Okay.
Devon's segment subject.
So, saying how we should just not remake things and just leave good things as they are.
Yeah. Mhm.
Star Wars prequels. I've been
Now,
thinking
where-
a lot about those
Ooh,
since the newest and final Star Wars film came out, and I saw that the Last of the Skywalker trilogy, saga.
Saga. Yeah.
Skywalker saga. I've been thinking back to the prequels, and I think they're actually better than people give them credit for.
Oh, controversial.
Especially some from the older generation in this podcast right now.
Oh,
No,
That's for sure.
all right.
I think.
Fingers?
Yes, I am. I think some of this, maybe not for episode 1, but I think especially for episode 3, the story arc and the character development of all of the characters and how they relate to each other is very, very interesting. That is kind of overlooked by just because it is very flashy, especially episode 3. It's kind of overlooked and assumed that it's only good for being flashy.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, so I can justify that again.
Star Wars prequels.
Oh, then you better justify it. Come on then.
Oh, you disagree?
No, I don't disagree. I think you're absolutely right.
So why is it universally? Well, that's probably a strong word. Why is it largely stated that the 3 prequels are so badly thought of by many Star Wars fans?
I think because...
Is it a generational thing?
I'm not sure if it's completely a generational thing, but I think people who obviously watched the original trilogy loved it, were huge Star Wars fans, and the prequels came out, and they were different to the original trilogy. That's for sure.
Yes.
And a lot of people don't like, as we said, it being different, as Ford said before.
I think it. Go on.
No, carry on.
I think it worries me. Do you mind if I go around?
No. Do you mind, sir?
We'll get better at this, I'm sure.
Yeah, maybe.
I think it worries me that in an attempt, and I was impressed when I first saw the pod racing sequence.
Yes, in episode 1, Phantom Menace. Yeah.
That was impressive, I have to say. But it almost feels like let's face it, they're science fiction action films.
Yeah.
They needed to up the action quotient for those 3 prequels beyond what the original 3 showed. They were action films, but they were more sedate in that, I suppose.
Yeah.
And it felt like the story, the narrative, played centre stage, and the Band Crash Wallop was secondary to it, or it served the narrative. Whereas in the prequels, it feels the other way round to me. Wow.
Interesting.
I don't know if I've ever really thought that through properly before, but and I am not an aficionado on Star Wars. You guys know much more about it than me. I went to see the first A New Hope. It wasn't called A New Hope then. We'd never even heard of that name. It was just Star Wars. It was called Star Wars in '76.
Oh.
Remind me, is that correct?
I think
so. I remember.
It's late 70s, I think.
Yeah, if it was 76, I stand to be corrected. I was 9 years old in '76, so so that it had a massive impact on me seeing that film, and the next 2 as well. But and obviously the very big gap before we had the episode 1 come out. But that's my only concern about modern filmmaking. Relies much more on the Band Crash Wallop than it does story and character and narrative. Yeah,
I can definitely see where you're coming from, and that's why I think a lot of people didn't like the prequels. Is because they have the perception of it being all about the graphics, all about the action. But I think when you actually look at the character relationships and the arcs, and this happens because this happens through the different 3 films, then it's actually more I'm going to say intelligent than the actual original trilogy.
Oh.
And that's a bit of a bold claim.
That is, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think I would definitely back you if you said the sequel trilogy, because
100%.
One criticism I have of the sequel trilogy is that it's very much all over the place. I don't think it tells a cohesive story. I think the things it sets up just fall flat sometimes.
Well, it's because it's different directors for different films.
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense. Yeah.
So one thing I can give props to the prequels for, even though I do love them actually, because I grew up with them, One thing I give props to them for is the fact that Lucas was trying to do something different and cohesive. It was a big idea, and he did it. You know, he followed through.
I just think it's super interesting seeing how, obviously, Qui-Gon Jinn wasn't supposed to die. This is going very, very specific, but Qui-Gon Jinn wasn't supposed to die. He was supposed to mentor Anakin Skywalker and be his master. He died, and a Padawan took over mentoring the chosen one. And it's like, if Qui-Gon Jinn didn't die, would the entire next 5 films actually happen with Vader? Would Anakin actually having a father figure rather than a brother figure of Obi-Wan actually help him stray from those disciplines that he failed to do? Yeah, because he didn't just switch to the dark side because, I don't really like this guy anymore, I'm going to kill him. He switched to the dark side because he wanted to save Padme, because he got into relationships that he shouldn't have gone into, and commitments that he had in those relationships, like pregnancy and that kind of thing.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's just one point, anyway.
Okay, just one. Yeah, I like that.
That's just one.
A good thought.
But basically, my main point is, I think people don't give it as much credit as it deserves. I think obviously the original trilogy are amazing films, and they're probably more set for everybody.
1 and 2 are amazing. Or 4 and 5.
4 and 5,
yeah.
I think they're more set for the general audience, for sure. But especially episode 3, I don't think it gets enough credit.
My problem with episode 3, and I know I've shared this with you before, is what am I going to say?
You're going to say the transition from Anakin to Vader was too quick.
Too quick. It just, within the half an hour, he'd gone from... I know there were signs of it, and I know it was coming, and you could see it from a long way off, but he just flipped too quick into somebody who could murder children.
But as I've said before, he murdered children in episode 2.
They were dead Jedi children.
Okay, now it's just racist if you're saying Jedi children are worth more than Tusken Raider children.
That's a good point.
Because he murdered children in episode 2.
He did.
Just out of pure anger.
Yeah, okay.
So it's not a huge jump. At that moment, he didn't have someone to go, okay, now you're on the dark side. I rename you now Darth Vader. You are now separate from the Jedi. Like he did in episode 3.
Are you suggesting that throughout episode 3 he's actually on the dark side already? He's already a kind of Sith in training?
I think so.
Because of his turn in episode 2. He
kills Count Dooku when he shouldn't have, and he recognises that he shouldn't have. It's not the Jedi way. He's always wearing black, which I think is symbolism.
Oh yeah.
Of that. For sure.
Yeah, I mean, Obi-Wan should have noticed that, shouldn't he, really?
Yeah, his wardrobe. Come on.
Yeah, exactly. What's going on here?
How obvious is that?
Go back and get changed, he should have said. We're off on a mission. I'm not having you go out looking like that.
You're the only Jedi who wears black.
Yeah, writing was on the wall, yeah.
But I also think the political side, obviously not going to politics, but it's Star Wars politics, and the political side of episodes, of all the episodes, to be honest, apart from maybe 2, was interesting. Yeah, it was interesting.
Is it?
Yeah.
But it's a kids' film. It's an entertaining film for the younger generation. Did they really need all the politics?
I enjoyed it.
I'd say from episode 1, no, there was too much.
No, there was too much politics in episode 1.
Maybe
I think the rest was okay. I think they got the balance better in the 2 and 3. Personally.
Sometimes the scrolling introduction is just too quick. You need to slow it down a bit.
It just zooms right past, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I have to give you time to get your glasses out.
Wait until it comes out on DVD and pause it so I can keep up with the story that's read. Yeah.
Just like that episode of Red Dwarf.
Yes. Yeah.
I remember, yeah.
Yeah. I watched it recently. Had to pause it.
Yeah.
They do a little take. Oh, you actually paused it?
Well, yeah, it was Beck's first time. They do that whole scrolling thing, and it went way too fast.
Only in one episode.
So the second time watching it, Beck paused it to try and read it all.
So it's not just me who thinks that then. Even the creators of Red Dwarf are playing on it, yeah?
Yeah, pretty much. If you want to read
Did it
into
on
it anyway.
purpose?
Yeah, they did it on purpose. It's
Okay.
super duper quick.
Cool. That's clever. That's clever. Yeah.
All right, Red Dwarf is my next topic of conversation.
Well,
Let's lock that in.
okay.
Thus concludes my segment.
Wow.
Unless anyone else has anything to say.
Thank you. There's a lot to think about there, and maybe I need to reevaluate my position. Maybe I need to watch them again.
Maybe.
Yeah, I must admit, it's been a long while.
You just
But the only
you just
thing I
converted someone.
remember,
I don't know about
the
that.
only thing I remember is how amazed I was, especially with the sounds
Yeah.
on the pod racing.
Okay.
Yeah, I love that. That's the first time I'd ever heard anything quite like that.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I think I'm gonna send you a video that I watched the other day, basically saying all the good things. 'Cause obviously, everyone said all the bad things about all the prequels, especially.
Yeah.
I'm gonna send you one that says all the good things about the episode 3. Maybe that swayed my opinion as well, like glorifying it too much, more than it deserves. But
yeah,
I'll see what you think.
that's good. Good that you challenge our thinking. Thank you. Yeah, we have to be open-minded, don't we? Our preconceptions should not be set in stone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Let's hope.
And I feel like we've all learned something today. hang on, we're not finished yet. So I'll save that sort of thing for later.
Okay. Thank you, Devon.
Bro.
Okay.
Sorry.
Well, that's been 3 interesting segment themes to discuss and share.
And now it's time for Random Chatting.
Now, before we go, as it is the first week in January.
Yes.
Let's have a little think now. Is there anything? Now, I know this is dangerous, and I know it's build yourself up to fall down. But have you approached this new decade, this new 2020, with any new plans of how you want, the kind of person you want to be?
Oh.
Like a resolution of some sort.
Yeah, that's another word for it. I was trying to avoid that phrase.
Do people not like that?
Well, resolutions.
Bit common.
I think I heard a statistic.
Oh. You heard about that?
I think it's 8%. Only 8% of resolutions last more than a week, or something like that. So in other words, 92% of them fail within a week. There you go. I can do maths as well.
But I hear that 80% of statistics are made up on the spot. So
that could explain it. Then, yeah.
So tell us the truth. Did you make that up?
Yeah.
No, I have heard that 8% thing before. Yeah.
Have you?
Yeah.
I didn't just make it up then.
Yeah, well done. Okay.
Yeah. Very good. So, any new ways of approaching this next year ahead that lies out fully stretched off into the distance ahead of us? What's your any approaches? I didn't put this as a subject. Somebody else wrote this down in the show notes to discuss.
We'll never know who. What?
Yeah.
What was it? Ironically, I put it down, but I didn't actually think of anything
What way
to
to
say. I don't know.
I'll start then.
Oh, okay.
I've tried and failed many times to do what I'm about to do. What I'm about to tell you, I'm already doing. I very appreciatively received a present from your sister, actually.
Yeah.
My youngest daughter. Something called a 6-minute diary, and it's like
I thought you were going to say dumbbells.
No. A bath bomb. Yeah, and it's my resolution to always use the bath bomb. No.
Have more baths.
Yeah.
Everyone's been saying it. I think I'm going to give it.
Thank you. Maybe I'll be thinking it. No, this 6-minute diary is a very interesting book, and I don't know a great deal about it. It's a German guy who's created it, and it's basically we've done it in our church house group, Roots group we call them, and we did it some time ago about counting your blessings, and it's we watched a series by a lady whose name I also forget, who wrote a book on 1,000 blessings, and she started keeping a journal or a diary of things to be thankful for, stuff that the everyday stuff that goes unnoticed normally, be appreciative for things that you don't easily notice. So
like flowers, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
It's nice.
I'll actually, hang on a second.
And he's gonna whip it out. Alright.
In my
Write that one down.
personal notebook.
Flowers.
No. Right. Oh no, it'll be under my face notebook. Sounds and blessings. I'm going back away now. I kept a little tab within my OneNote notebook. On the 22nd of the 10th, 2016, one of my blessings was, and I wrote this down on that date, so it's 2016, Devon telling me that he had missed me.
Oh,
Eh?
I don't remember this.
that's like the only time it's ever happened.
That was a nice thing. That was a blessing to me. And obviously, he lived a long way away then.
I do
He
remember
still
this,
lived
yeah.
very close. Do you remember
Yeah, I
coming
do
to
remember.
visit
Yeah,
and
Oh.
telling me that you missed me? I think,
I
yeah.
do remember.
Does that, does that mean it's not happened since?
Yeah, no, it hasn't.
Oh, that's
So that was one of those things I wrote in my original blessing journal, if you like. I won't go through all the others, but listening to an owl while sitting in the garden by the chimea. That was another thing. You know, things like that.
Tranquil.
Things like that. Things that you might otherwise notice if you didn't write it down. So back to the 6-minute diary. Basically, what it involves is me getting up earlier, maybe, or getting up when my alarm goes off. It goes off at 7 o'clock every morning. Instead of snoozing it, I just need to get up and spend 3 minutes. That's not a lot. Going through the first part of the diary page for that day, and I don't have it in front of me, so I can't share it, but it gives you some headings that you fill out really quickly and easily. Things you're thankful for, things that you hope to achieve in your day, and then at the end of the day, you do another 3 minutes at the end of the day, and usually when you've gone to bed, perhaps before you switch the light out, and things that you did that had a positive impact on somebody else and things like that. So how were you a blessing to others and things like that? So I am going to endeavour to do that each day from now on. So if you talk about New Year's resolutions, I'm going to look forward, and I've already started doing my 6-minute diary.
Well, that's nice.
Yeah, and hopefully it'll make me a better person.
Oh.
Because that's what's good about this diary is that in the front of it there's about 60 pages of explanation about all the ways in which it improves your life if you can stick to it. And it's sound stuff. I agree with the way it's been taught. It's not spiritual, it's not, but it is. These things are often fundamentally true because they're true. You know, they.
Are we getting a sponsor out of this?
No.
Best
I should hope so.
Well, I'll maybe contact him and tell him I've been promoting it.
Try one viewer.
Yeah, so that's my new thing for the year. I've done all sorts in the past. I wanted to learn to speak another language and all sorts of different things, but yeah, that's never happened. So this, I hope, will be much easier and more positive thing for me to attain.
Wow.
That last
Anybody
point
else?
that you made, that just made me think of something. Because
Okay. Cool.
today, and it's happened many times before, I was at work and a couple came into the store and they were speaking, well, they were using sign language to talk.
Okay.
And it was quite hard to communicate with them because obviously I didn't speak sign language.
Yeah.
Or sign language, whatever you say.
Yeah.
And I thought many times before, it's happened so much of where someone who can't hear comes into store
Yeah.
and no one can talk to them because no one in the whole store speaks sign language or sign language, whatever it is. And I really, really wanted to give that a shot.
You know, this is amazing.
Very, very excited by this thing.
I am excited by this because guess what? At church today, it was announced from the front that our church is taking down names for people who want to register to learn BSL.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
British
Sign
Sign Language, yeah.
Right.
So that is something our church is about to do, start a course on learning BSL. And that came about because we had somebody doing BSL at the beginning, or during, our carol service before Christmas. So, and it went down really well. So that's fabulous thing. I do encourage you to really try and do that, Devon.
Because it'll help in every walk of life, no matter what I go into. It'd be an asset. And there's so many people who can't. Pretty much people who can speak it or can sign it. People who need to. And not just the everyday person. It's like there's people who just can't talk to a certain person. It's very strange. But
So even in the retail environments, it's be an asset, wouldn't it?
Yeah. It's happened happens loads of times where someone who can't really communicate outside of BSL.
Yeah.
And no one else in the store can use that language.
Fabulous.
Yeah.
I'm excited by that just because of we don't believe in coincidences, but just because that's come up twice today in this conversation and in our service this morning. Yeah. Well done.
So I don't know how much I'm going to be able to stick to that, but I want to give it a shot. And
it's a bit of a trek because obviously listeners probably don't. We're not all in the same room. Maybe it's obvious. It's a bit of a trek from where you are to where I am.
Yeah.
But I encourage that wholeheartedly. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it's a New Year's resolution or anything, because I literally just thought of it again today. But
be a goal for the next 12 months to make inroads into that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well done. And what about you, Ford? Have you come up with anything now?
No.
What you wanted to
Unbelievable.
Let's just say, read the Bible every day. How about that? You like that? It's your thing.
I like that. That can't do you any harm whatsoever, can it?
No, it can't.
Yeah.
You hope.
Very good.
Nice.
Oh, I've got sort of another.
Oh, two.
Yeah.
You'll have two.
Yeah.
Ford
another. Yeah, you can borrow this one. I listen to quite a lot of podcasts, and over the forthcoming podcast shows, I might share some of them with you, even though I don't get under any sponsorship arrangement. I just want, if they do me good, I want to share them with other people. And one of them is one called the Daily Audio Bible.
Oh yeah.
Which is available on all good podcasts. Podcasts, what do you call them? Sites?
Apps? Dispensaries?
Yeah, okay.
One of those.
But the Daily Audio Bible has been running for about 15 years. I've been listening to it for 13 years now.
Yep.
Going through the Bible once a year, every year. And it's such a blessing to my life. But the guy who reads it every day, it's about a 20-minute podcast every day. He called Brian Harding. And his daughter, who is now 22, so she would have only been pre-teen when it first began. She is now doing a podcast, and she's been doing it for a couple of years now, and it's called Daily Audio Bible Chronological. So she's reading the whole Bible chronologically.
Wow,
that's so I've added that now to my podcast feed, and I am listening to the Daily Audio. They call it double dabbing. So we listen to. I want to find that so funny, but when you're a Daily Audio Bible listener who listens to the ordinary one, which takes a segment of the Old Testament, a segment of the New Testament, a segment of Psalms, and a segment of Proverbs each day, and then spreads it out throughout the whole year, so you listen to the whole Bible.
Very nice.
That's the original Daily Audio Bible podcast. If you're double dabbing, you're also listening to his daughter's podcast called. Is it rude? It's not rude, is it?
No, it's not.
It just sounds funny, I think.
I know. That's what the other podcast users call it. Yeah. They listen to chronological as well. Now, at the moment, obviously, both are in Genesis. The last 4 or 5 days, I've just been reading the first few chapters of Genesis. But it'll be interesting to see where it goes, because I don't have a chronological Bible, but it will be very interesting to see.
I see.
What
because
comes next.
The books in the Bible, in your general Bible, aren't in order, are they?
No, that's correct. Yeah.
I see. Sorry, I thought you just meant they were reading from Genesis to in order.
No, that's not chronologically.
Well,
no. They'll be read in the order in which. Now, this is when I'm not sure about. Is it the order in which they took place, the order in which they were written.
Yeah.
Oh, I see.
I'm not 100% sure because I don't think it can be order in which they're written because Job is the oldest book in the Bible. It was written the furthest ago, if you know what I mean.
So if it was that way around, it would be the first one.
So Job would have been first.
But
so
chronologically, it would be Genesis.
So chronologically, we've started with Genesis. So it must be the order in which the events take place.
Well, that's usually how it is when you mention it with like film. Like say if you're going to watch Star Wars chronologically, you would go for the one.
Back there again, are we?
Yeah, full circle. Perfect.
I was actually, we'll come back to that another time. So that's good. That's all good. Yeah.
Yeah, good.
So you'd recommend I download the double dab?
Don't double dab. Try the chronological though if you want.
Okay. No, very good.
Don't run before you can walk, right?
No, okay, yeah.
Give it a go. It's only 20 minutes a day. Listen to it in a car on the way to work. Yeah.
I guess I'm only 10 minutes down the road, but that's fine.
Yeah.
Listen to it on the way back as well, yeah. That works.
Half on the way there, half on the way back. That's good.
Yeah, alright.
Yeah. It interests me though how some people can be put off by an American accent.
Yes.
Whereas we're quite happy to watch films and comedies and TV dramas.
This isn't it. This isn't it. Hang on. This isn't it.
No,
it's not his accent, right? It's the way he talks. Because he's very soft.
His daughter's got a very easy to listen to voice, so I'm sure.
Yeah, but you think that of his voice as well.
I do. Yeah.
And it's too soft for me, you know.
Yeah.
Does he not send you off to Nodland?
He does, yeah.
I when I first started listening to Brian Hardin's podcast, I was in a place where I needed to be reassured that God loved me a lot, and and it worked. Yeah, he did, and I received that, and I think it was his gentle, easy, on the ears way of speaking that. I guess
I think it's just not for me.
Okay, that's fine then.
I think it's definitely because I've listened to it before with you, and it's definitely good content, and it's good messages, and it's the way he delivers everything is really good. It's just the way he talks doesn't resonate with me very well. That is all.
Well.
Very, very, very.
But I would recommend if you can get past the way that he speaks.
Yeah, thank you. And if you're not sure about Brian's voice, listen to his daughter's podcast. She's great.
Yeah.
Okay, guys.
It's homework time and hasta la vista, baby.
Got some homework to do.
Oh, have we?
What are we going to watch or listen to or play? One subject we haven't talked about today, and that is gaming. Reassure the podcast listeners, if there's anybody out there, show 2 will hopefully have some gaming content in it. We've got some stuff on our. We've talked a lot about film and more philosophical stuff today.
Theological? Is that what you're going
for?
Oh,
I wasn't going to go theological.
Okay.
Philosophy and theology.
Philosophical.
Philosophical,
philosophical, yeah.
Whatever we can say, we'll do. How about that?
Yeah.
So nothing.
Yeah.
Now, I got a couple of subjects now, movies. One of the things I'd like to talk about is artificial intelligence.
I knew you were going to say this.
Yeah. Unless you've got a suggestion for a film to watch.
We watched Ex Machina the other day.
Ex Machina, that was the one I wanted to suggest.
It's
he's already seen it, it's too late.
So it's fresh in your mind, you've got access to that?
Yep, it's on Netflix.
Okay, what about you then, Ford?
I don't know, we're getting sponsored by Netflix.
Well, I've got it on DVD. So can we all watch Ex Machina again before the podcast? And then we'll have some interesting thoughts to share on that, won't we?
No doubt, yeah.
In our next podcast. Yeah, all right then.
Bro,
fabulous.
Excellent.
Brilliant, guys. Thank you so much for your...
It's been a pleasant first time, isn't it?
Yeah, I think
10 out of 10.
We just hit an hour as well, flipping.
Oh, wow. I'd listen to it. Again. I'd put it on repeat. All right, guys. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone else, for listening.
You've been listening to Theory of Anything
with people.
with all of us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Take care. We'll see you
Bye.
again soon. Bye.
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 Bye.